Sometimes life leads you down paths you never expected, and the cost of those choices isn't clear until it's too late. Today, I sit here alone, feeling the faint life growing inside me. As I hold my hand against my belly, the weight of my choices becomes almost unbearable. There's a lot of pain, regret, and confusion. And the cost? Well, that's what I'm still discovering every day as I think about Ethan and Mark. My name is Sarah, I'm 26 years old, and I've been married to Ethan for nearly 3 years. When we first met, it felt like the stars had aligned. He was everything I thought I wanted: loving, loyal, and so supportive. Our early days were like something out of a romance novel: long walks, whispered secrets, shared dreams. But time can erode even the strongest bonds. Over the years, I watched as the Ethan I fell in love with became more of a stranger to me. Ethan had started working longer hours, spending most of his time and energy on his job. When he came home, he was exhausted, hardly able to offer more than a quick kiss or a tired smile. I told myself it was normal, that relationships change. But something inside me felt hollow, like I was missing something I couldn't quite name. To fill that void, I decided to get a job. I wanted something to make me feel alive again, to give me a sense of purpose outside my marriage. So I began working as an intern at a prestigious firm. That's where I met Mark. He was my boss, and right from the start, he exuded a charisma that seemed to capture everyone in the office. People respected him, admired him, and over time I found myself drawn to him as well. At first it was innocent. A respectful distance, polite exchanges, maybe a little extra attention that made me feel noticed. But slowly, that attention became something more. It was in the way he looked at me, the way his hand would linger on my shoulder a second too long, or the way his eyes would meet mine across the office, silently conveying something I tried to ignore. One afternoon, Mark called me into his office. "Sarah, sit down," he said, smiling that knowing smile. We talked about work, but then he asked, "How's married life treating you?" I froze, caught off guard by the question. I mumbled something about being happy, but even as I said the words, I knew they sounded hollow. He leaned in, his gaze intent. "I thought you might say that," he said softly. There was something almost predatory in his smile. Leaving his office that day, my heart was pounding. I knew I should stay away, but every glance, every touch from him stirred something inside me that I couldn't ignore. It felt dangerous, exciting, and utterly forbidden. The weeks passed, and Mark's attention only grew. One evening, we stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home, and the building was quiet, dimly lit. He called me into his office again, and I've been married to Ethan for nearly 3 years. When we first met, it felt like the stars had aligned. He was everything I thought I wanted: loving, loyal, and so supportive. Our early days were like something out of a romance novel: long walks, whispered secrets, shared dreams. But time can erode even the strongest bonds. Over the years, I watched as the Ethan I fell in love with became more of a stranger to me. Ethan had started working longer hours, spending most of his time and energy on his job. Always watching over our shoulders, always aware of the risk. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. At home, Ethan remained as loving as ever, oblivious to the betrayal unfolding behind his back. Every time he looked at me with those trusting eyes, I felt a pang of guilt that almost made me end things with Mark. But every time I saw Mark again, all my resolve crumbled. It was as if I was addicted to the thrill, the secrecy, the feeling of being wanted in a way I hadn't felt in years. One evening, as Ethan sat next to me on the couch, I found myself holding back tears. He noticed and asked, "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile, assuring him I was fine, but inside, I was anything but fine. I was drowning in lies, and Ethan had no idea. Then came the day that changed everything. I started feeling unwell: morning sickness, dizziness. I thought it was just stress, but when I went to the doctor, I received news I hadn't expected: I was pregnant. My mind spun with questions and fears. Whose baby was it? Ethan's or Mark's? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. How could I ever face Ethan if this child wasn't his? I couldn't bring myself to tell Mark. He was a complication in my life, a risk I was no longer sure I could handle. But the guilt and fear continued to eat away at me. A few weeks later, Mark and I were meeting secretly in a parking garage. We thought we were alone, but as we kissed, I saw a car pull up nearby Ethan's car. My heart stopped. Ethan hadn't seen us yet, but he was getting closer, looking for a parking spot. Panicking, I quickly pulled away, but it was too late. Ethan's gaze fell on us, and in that moment I saw his world shatter. He didn't say anything at first, just stared in shock. But then his phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, a message from Mark's assistant, sent to him by mistake, reading, "Are you still seeing Sarah? People in the office are talking ... Ethan looked up at me, his face twisted in hurt and betrayal. Sarah ... How could you? His voice was barely above a whisper, raw and broken. I felt my world crumbling. Ethan walked away, leaving me there with nothing but my guilt and shame. Mark tried to speak, but I pushed him away. In that moment I realized I had lost everything. Ethan, my husband, the one person who loved me unconditionally, was gone. And now I was left alone, carrying a child whose paternity was a mystery even to me. Now, as I sit here, feeling the small fluttering movements of life within me, I can't help but wonder what the future holds. Ethan has left, and Mark has disappeared, leaving me to bear the consequences of my choices alone. I don't know who this baby's father is, but I know one thing: I will love this child no matter what. But I don't know how I will ever tell them the truth, how I will explain the betrayal, the lies, the mistakes that brought them into this world. This forbidden affair has cost me everything. The regret, the shame, and the pain will be my companions from here on out. And as I look down at my growing belly, I wonder if this is the price I was always destined to pay.